a lot harder to stop. And I think, you know what, people's jobs and people's livelihoods and small radio stations, and I can go on with the small business owner in America, but I think we depend on reviving this.
I think so. America needs it, and there's so many people that have unique items that they could sell and would sell if they just had that opportunity. And why is it that we have everything made in China? Why is it everything made in Malaysia? I mean, why is that? Why did we even allow it?
This kind of typifies Chuck's whole career and who he was, though. He was the people's advocate. Whether it was talking about economics, whether it was talking about politics, he threw out the left-right paradigm and said, look, what's good for the people? What's good for the working man? What's good for society? What's good for... And really, that kind of wraps up who Chuck was and what his efforts were to accomplish. He was a pioneer in that effort. He was a leader in that effort. And we need to make sure that leadership, that legacy, continues today through all of us.
Amen. We're working and doing what we can here on our end with For the People, and with your help, we have been able to resurrect through the years For the People and been able to be on radio stations. And your efforts with Liberty, I think, is cutting edge, and you guys are working hard every single day to educate and enlighten and empower people about what they can do instead of...
But you can't say you guys because you're one of us, Keith, and you're educated by us as part of your arm, so it's us, really.
All right, it's team effort.
As Americans, it's us.
Team effort. Yeah.
And that's the way Chuck looked at it, too, from what I understand. The whole goal of Project USA was to get the average American involved. It wasn't just Chuck's deal. It was us. And
everybody.
That's why, Pat and Chuck were saying, look, you're part of this. Start generating revenue for your family and for your life, and then, hey, those are great tax questions to have. But it was about us. It was about bringing everybody in, and Chuck got people more involved than anybody I've ever seen.
Yeah, feel included, counted in, because the little guy really felt like he was forgotten.
And Chuck, I think, addressed that in a very meaningful, very productive, very solutions-oriented way. Everybody else might have even gave lip service to it. But Chuck literally put his feet on the ground and literally created a way and kind of paved a way for that to happen. No doubt when you run up against big government bureaucrats, the swamp is pretty brutal. But I think that we can have round 2, round 3, round 4 of this, and I think we should never give up. The Founding Fathers would be disappointed if we do. The Founding Fathers would herald Chuck's spirit and say, hey, let's make sure to carry forth this legacy. And I really think that's the key here. What can we do to honor Chuck? The answer would be to take these initiatives, this visionary viewpoint that he had, this strategic plan that he put in place, and let's carry it out. Let's build upon it. We can do these things.
Yeah, maybe the time is now. In the climate right now, like you say, in the White House, with these ideas that were really on Chuck's mind and in his heart and on the microphone talking about these issues decades, literally, before these things were put into motion here. And Donald Trump, he's saying it's a trip. Really, if you step back and you listen to what Donald Trump says, you're like, isn't that what Chuck was talking about in the 80s and 90s? And into the 2000s, I mean, the message is finally articulated in a meaningful way.
Well, and the infrastructure is starting to be built to do it with some of these digital cash solutions that are cryptocurrencies and things. A lot of things are being decentralized. A lot of opportunities and laws are changing that are in our favor for small business, lower taxes. We just need to capitalize on this and put something in place. What we need now is people with bold leadership.
That's
what Chuck provided until the IRS shut him down. But that's what Chuck provided. And I think it's imperative on a lot of us in radio and in the media to carry forward that leadership. Because I think that's what the world needs is leadership. That's what we lack right now.
Yeah. Leadership and authenticity. Chuck, it was said by many, was just a very trustworthy kind of guy. People believed Chuck when he went on the air, what he said, and because he researched and he didn't just put stuff out just to put it out.
Well, for example, I look at the news reporter that Chuck had. It was a newspaper, and maybe we do a digital one of that in the future. Maybe we use legacy and newspaper. I don't know. But the point was that was a refreshing radio/newsprint solution that you said, you know what, it's something that I can trust. And right now, there's very few places I can trust for news. I mean, there's fake news everywhere.
Yeah.
And one of the things that Chuck had was, you could trust the information that was put out, that it was well-researched. It wasn't left. It wasn't right. It wasn't conservative. It wasn't liberal. It was just American. And it was just from a true, honest perspective of, hey, here's what's going on. Here's the situation. Here's the circumstance. Here's the opportunity. And it was from that perspective, and I'm telling you, people loved it.
Now, we've heard from Stanton Freeman, Phil Paleologos, Kay Reitz, the icon in Tampa Bay, Ted Webb, who said that he really got his start in radio because of Chuck Harder, that hosted.
Just like me.
Yeah, AM Tampa Bay said he was the host for 34 years of the show. He's on dialysis now. He had to retire, but said that if it wasn't for Chuck Harder, there would have been no AM Tampa Bay.
Oh, I believe that's true, and if it wasn't for Chuck Harder, there'd be no Liberty News Radio, there'd be no Liberty Roundtable Live. You know, when I got in the radio business, I bought an AM 540 KNAK radio station because Chuck, said, hey, we need to have people buy stations and carry forth this Project USA, and I was like, I'm in. So I sold a house and bought a radio station. I didn't have a clue what I was doing, by the way. I learned by hard knocks, as Chuck would say, hey, how you doing? Well, this is how far I got, kind of an idea. Right?
Yeah.
Anyway, and I bring that up to say that when Chuck got kicked off of his original network by the United Auto Workers, and I would call them thugs, that's just my own word.
They were.
My opinion, they were thugs. Okay, and when they shut him down, and the idea was, hey, do you want to put your radio station on Talk America or on the old radio network that turned into UBN or whatever, what do you want to do? I said, I'm not doing anything until I hear from Chuck. And as soon as Chuck tells me what to do, I'm going to do it. Because I bought a radio station to support Chuck in his efforts, and I believed in what he was doing. And 5 minutes later, Chuck calls me on the phone. He said, Sam, it's Chuck. I'm telling you right now that these people are undercutting me. They're undermining what we're doing. And the fact is, I'm going to be over here at Talk America, and I'd love you to join me. I said, done, and he was on the next day.
Wow.
And that's the kind of stuff we're talking about here, is that Chuck was a person that communicated well. He had a golden voice on the radio, and he articulated things and provided leadership. And so I just said, hey, I want to be where Chuck's at. I just didn't know which way the wind blew at that point. I was hearing all kinds of information, and I didn't know who knew what. And that's why I'm just like, hey, I'm going to hear from the source.
Yeah.
And once Chuck said, I just said, all right, look, I'm over with Talk America. That's where Chuck's show is. We're putting on that show. They intentionally, to cause problems, launched Jerry Hughes against Chuck just to create problems.
They did.
We need less of that, and we need more of the American people working together for the solutions. I don't care about liberal or conservative or right, left, or any of those things. We do need to make America great again, and it starts with moral people getting involved, setting aside the divides, and finding a way to make it economically viable. And I think that's what Chuck provided.
Amen. I couldn't have said it any better. And I appreciate so much of your efforts. Who is the name of your talk show guy that's with you, your co-host?
Oh, it's Kurt Crosby. He's been with me forever. How we got into radio is we bought a radio station. I bought it and I owned it, but yet Kurt and we took our two families and moved 100 miles away to learn how to run it. We've been fast friends ever since, and he's one of the best. And he provides a very unique viewpoint on the radio. Yeah,
he does. And you guys counter each other very nicely, and that's the synergy is so important, especially when you're on with somebody else doing a talk show. You got to have somebody that compliments you, compliments the broadcast, and then it's nice to listen to. But you guys don't just put on a show to hear yourself talk. You guys research your stuff, and you guys know what you're talking about.
Solutions is one of the unique things about us, and that's what we loved about Chuck, is that solution side. A lot of people can babble about the problems. How many people can provide solution-oriented leadership? We do our best to provide that. Chuck provided that, and in my opinion, that's what's sorely needed today.
Absolutely. More people to be brave and stand up and not lose heart. And it's sometimes when the heat comes, people just back down. They don't do anything. A lot of people do that because they don't want the fight. Chuck fought the good fight. You continue to fight the good fight. It's not easy. It's not easy. And nobody said it would be. But there was nothing easy about our independence either. But
Pat and Chuck, I should say Chuck and Pat, and Chuck and Paleologos, and Chuck and a few other people had incredible synergism on the air. It was incredible to watch. Even Chuck and Ralph Nader back in the day had incredible synergism. And I'm not really a big Ralph Nader fan, but when he would work with Chuck, I was, because they were focused on not any radical, extreme leftist ideas. Mm-hmm. They were focusing on issues that related to the people.
That's it.
And that's really critical to understand about Chuck. For the People was a perfect name for what he did.
It was. It fit. Some people scoff over the fluffy, cheesy jingle because some of them said it didn't fit Chuck because Chuck was gloom and doom. Not all his programs were. Some of them, the Oklahoma City bombing, Ruby Ridge, these were tough subject matters.
Yes, they were, but he stuck with the real news. He did it eloquently. And the other thing to remember is that Chuck, at the heart, was a consumer advocate, and that jingle fits that consumer advocacy.
It does.
And the for the people message incredibly well. Let's not fool ourselves.
No, and, we have grown by our listenership, people on the left and the right, and I get all sorts of compliments, and they're like, you know what I like about you? You stand on your beliefs and your core principles, but you're not hateful. And I think when we do that, even though we're different with what we believe when it comes down to some time of the agendas and direction of the country, when you get hateful and you start taking cheap shots and like that, there's no way that we can unite that way.
Yeah, I like to say it like this. We can agree to disagree agreeably.
I like that.
If we learn to do that in America, we can all win. And that's one thing Chuck did very well. Again, it wasn't about right and left. And even when people disagreed, and you look at the talk shows on his original 24 network, he was a pioneer in that, a 24/7 radio network. But you look at the different hosts, and they all had completely different perspectives.
Jerry Hughes, my dad said he was great.
Washington on Trial, that was a hardcore political show, but then Joel Vincent was your hangout guy.
That's right.
In the evenings, you had Paul Gonzalez with reflective interviews of celebrities and things. I mean, you had on all these people that had these unique perspectives, and they were all different. If you forced them in a room, they might not agree on anything. It didn't matter.
No.
They agreed on having fun, working hard, blessing America, and the truth.
And they love our country.
That's
right.
You say, wow.
Yeah, it was truly revolutionary what Chuck did with the People's Radio Network, PNI. Chuck's going to be missed. We're doing a tribute show to Chuck Harder. We've went on at 11 Eastern, and we're way over, but well worth it because we had to have Sam on because, Sam, you made that trip, that pilgrimage to the Telford Hotel, didn't you?
I went to Florida and went to the Broadcasters Convention with a bunch of people. I was with Kay Reitz. I was with Ed Shiflett. I was with Jay Harrison. I was with so many different people. And we all went to this broadcasters convention in Florida, and Chuck paid for us to go.
Wow. That was important. And you got to meet Chuck, the man behind the mic, and be able to talk to him off the microphone and became friends with him.
Yes, and I called him even just a few months ago, and he wasn't doing very well. And he just said, you know what, I'm glad to hear from you. I'm glad to hear. It's nice to know people haven't forgotten me. And he was kind of in that mode a little bit where, hey, it's hard to be a guy like Chuck, and then, hey, you're not available to do what you did and that you loved so much and stuff. The what do you say? The spirit's willing and the flesh is weak kind of a scenario.
Absolutely.
Well, he was grateful that folks would reach out and say, Chuck, we wanted to just see how you're doing. And it was that simple of a discussion. But I could tell that he was appreciative of it. Yeah,
he did appreciate the people who were close to him and didn't forget him. Because he suffered, and with health issues, and then his wife went home a little over a year ago and died of cancer, and that really took the wind out of his sails.
I take courage in knowing, because I'm a Christian, and so I believe he's joined her. And they're together now, and good things are happening as a result of that wonderful union. And even though it's sad we lose Chuck, it's important to carry on his legacy. And most importantly, it's important to realize that, hey, Chuck, I believe, is still making a difference in talk radio from the other side. He's with the Lord where he ought to be. But I don't believe he's given up on us. And I do believe that he has the ability to influence things for good and to help our sacred cause going forward. And so I take courage in that.
Well,
Chuck lives through a lot of us. He really does.
Chuck loved where he lived, too, in White Springs, where he did the show for many years, right on the banks of the Swanee River. So in tribute to Chuck, real quickly here, and we'll bring you back on, is the Swanee River song. We got it in our queue, on our cart machine here, on our digital cart. It's called the Riverboat Song. But a lot of the themes that you would hear on the show were based off Stephen Foster, because the folk park there, the Stephen Foster Memorial, was there. And Chuck really just liked the calypso and the type of music. But here we go. You remember this on the show, I'm sure. way down upon the Swanee River.
Makes you want to bust out and eat fried chicken and